Welcome to the Miskatonic Playhouse and Backstage with Pookie from Reviews from Rillier. Now, Pookie, we have some questions for you. Firstly, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me on. I'm greatly honoured, and it was most unexpected.
Not at all. As we had a quick chat before we started, and when we reached out to the community and say, who do you want to hear from? Your name was echoing around the many halls of the Playhouse, so we had to get you on. I'm going to be very selfish, and I'm going to start with a question from me. And I think I'm going to take advantage of that little privilege there. So my question is, to start with, is how many reviews do you think you've done?
Now the question is, do you mean how many reviews for the Miskatonic repository have I done? How many reviews have I done in total on the blog, or how many reviews in total do I think I've written ever?
I think it's all three of those.
Okay, so Miskatonic repository, it's 175 because that one has just gone up this evening.
Excellent.
Which is Stuart Sellen's Host and Hostility.
Fantastic.
Okay. And then how many reviews on the blog? It's over 1900.
Wow.
I have been doing it for over 10 years on the blog.
Yeah. But still, I mean, that is a fantastic number, isn't it? That's something to aspire to for anybody.
Well, yes. I mean, I did 365 last year, which I would not recommend anybody doing. It's literally just sort of like I got up to over 300, about 324 at the beginning of December, and I went, "Can I do 365 this year?" Sure, and that was my December gone.
Excellent.
I don't recommend doing it. In total, if I add to that, let me see, I would have done somewhere in the region of about 700 or so back in the 20 zeros. When I was writing for Steve Jackson Games, E-Zines, Pyramid,
wow,
D20 Weekly, and the Journal of the Traveller's Aid Society. So
I think it's fair to say, listeners, Pookie's got some experience when it comes to reviewing. I think that's a fair comment to say.
Pretty much. I have only been sort of like semi-seriously reviewing, I mean, since about roughly the turn of the millennium.
Which could be longer than some of our listeners have actually been alive. So that's, yeah, again, I think that's definitely a qualification right there. Right, we'll move on to our questions. Our next question, the one I'm not selfishly going to retain for myself. So our first question is from Kat Clay. So Kat is asking, I always want to know what makes a great scenario.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm going to say okay, so when I look at a scenario from the Miskatonic repository, what I'm looking for is, okay, is it an interesting setting? Is there plenty of investigation to do? I mean, I like cosmic horror, but I also like the meat of that investigation process and putting the taking the clues and putting them together. Does have an interesting plot. It does have an interesting plot, which is a new twist upon something we've seen before. But does it give the players enough agency? Ultimately, I think that's the combination that I'm looking for.
Okay, so interesting setting, investigation heavy, because that's something that you really enjoy, and it is fundamentally a part of what we see with and what we like about Call of Cthulhu, and player agency.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a really nice kind of triangle, trifecta of things to be able to hit. Okay, perfect. I suppose there's a Venn diagram someone needs to draw there, saying that is the ingredients for a good scenario. Okay. Our next question is from Dice, Music, and Bear. And they're asking, out of the books you've worked on, which is your favorite?
I think the most significant was probably Zweihander. It was certainly the biggest that I've worked on, which I was given about 2 months to work on it, which meant I wasn't doing anything else apart from
just in terms of that 2 months, then giving 2 months to work on it, for someone like myself, is that a significant amount of time for you to do what you needed to do, or is that hey, you've got 2 months, Pookie, we need you?
That's 2 months. 2 months, get to it.
Right. Okay.
It was close to 500,000 words. Um,
Wow.
and yes, it was quite late in the day. And it got me to Gen Con. They were basically, basically what paid me to Gen Con. But I did get it in I beat the deadline by 10 minutes.
Okay, well, a deadline's a deadline. Whether
Yeah.
you beat it by 10 minutes or 10 hours or 10 days.
But the thing is, all I had been doing for those 2 months was going to work, coming home, writing reviews, editing, and that was it, which wasn't great for my partner. And I was exhausted at the end of it, so it was really work. I think books I'm proud of, giving a polish to the next release from Golden Goblin Press, which is the Britannia source book. That's really good. And then I think if I go back to the book I'm kind of proud of really having worked on is the Master Nyarlathotep Companion.
Yes, very famous book.
Yeah, which, it took about 10 years to bring that to fruition. And it's a fantastic project. Lots of lovely details in there. Not necessarily very much in terms of my contribution, in actual physical contribution to it. I did a lot of pre-generated characters for it, and throw in all the extra scenario suggestions that I could find, going through, my back knowledge of sort of like Call of Cthulhu role-playing canon and that sort of thing. But it was a lovely thing to work on.
It's one of those books that I think whenever so for someone like myself who would love to have a copy of that book, to try and find it, it's you've got to sell your soul and somebody else's soul to try and get a copy of it.
Yeah, pretty much these days. A lot of it has been superseded by the 5th edition of Master Nyarlathotep, the most recent edition for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. Yeah. There are. I'm not saying there are. Essentially, I'm not saying that anything came from the companion to the new edition, but essentially, it's a similarity of thinking.
Yeah, and I imagine. You can't help it, can you? If you'd written early Massive Nyarlathotep, and then you were looking at that companion book as well, you're looking at all the other source material. When a new version comes along, there's going to be conscious and/or subconscious elements and aspects in there, just to make the game as good as it possibly can be. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. All right. Here's a question from Chaos Badger. And they ask what your opinions on other settings are apart from the 20s. Do you have a specific setting that is your bag?
I pretty much like Call of Cthulhu. So I like a lot of different settings because I like a lot of different role-playing games, and they're all sort of like, oh, this is interesting. What can I play in this period? And how does that affect for Call of Cthulhu, how I investigate? So I like Cthulhu Invictus because in one ways it makes investigation much more physical, because there's less working your way through Mythos tomes, and of course there's no newspapers to look at and so on. But then again, Cthulhu by Gaslight is fun. I've just had a look at Cthulhu, Regency Cthulhu, and that is fascinating to play from a social point of view because of the sort of like the tension between, your reputation and not soiling that by going off and dirtying your hands doing an investigation into this horrific thing that's going on over there.
Yeah, no, we're big fans of Regency Cthulhu over at the Playhouse. One of our little projects is a Regency project, but I think you're right. And from what you're saying there, it's almost that each setting. Please tell me if I'm wrong, Pookie, but each setting creates a different dynamic. So you have to investigate in a way that suits that setting. You can't just be right, well, this is my character, and all right, we'll do Invictus, and I'm just that, but in Roman form, or I'm that in Regency form. There is a change of style and a change of play per setting.
Absolutely. I mean, if I was doing modern, I would probably not play Call of Cthulhu. I would go and play another Lovecraftian horror role-playing game, which we probably shouldn't mention on the repository.
No, well, I mean, I think that's interesting because, you know, the scenarios that I've written and where I've played haven't really touched on the modern, but I have to say, I'm going to say it, and I know they're pals of the Playhouse, but we got the opportunity to play, and it's going to be released via the Playhouse in the near future. Got to play Alex Gilot's and Bud from Bud's RPG Reviews Viral, and I have to say, because of what they did with the approach to, you know, how would you use technology or how would technology feature, it wasn't just here's a modern setting and here's a scenario. It was the idea of, we're actually going to make you interact with the technology, which made the investigation really interesting. So for me, that contact with a modern setting, that it was done in a very, very specific way, which was an eye opener.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because I mean, I was the editor on that, so I worked on that.
Yeah.
With Bud and Alex, and I played the very original. I play tested the very original version of that scenario, which was written for Call of Cthulhu at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to leave that. You can ask Bud yourself for that. So I'm not gonna...
yeah. When Bud's on, Bud, that's a question for you.
Yeah. And then, really nice of him to bring me along on and exit. And that was a great project to work on as well. And Viral is very clever in the way that it uses its technology, essentially not just to engage the players in the scenario and actually push them through the story as it goes along.
Yeah, no, I like I said, it was an experience for me, and it made me think about if I were to. I think I'd like to, because I think all the writers on the MR, they're looking for challenges. It's why we're doing it. It's exciting, it's creative. You want to write something that other people can have fun with and face a challenge. So I think, for me, if I were to write a modern scenario, I think I'd probably have to relook at Viral and kind of go, right, how was it they made this modern day that we live in every day? Because that's the fun, isn't it, about Regency and about Invictus, is we don't live in it, so we get to play in it. So to play and be excited about today, there's got to be something different about it.
Yeah. I mean, Viral, unfortunately, set very high standards for modern role play.
Yeah.
And that's evidenced by the fact, it remains such a high seller on the repository itself. I mean, and in addition, there's lots of other places and settings where I think you could run a Call of Cthulhu campaign very easily.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant, cool. Well, thank you for that one. Right, well, here's a question. We got a couple of questions actually from JR, because he's come up with some absolute blinders. JR's first question is, over the years, reading and reviewing MR scenarios, have you noticed any changes or trends?
So let's have a look at trends. Trends, I would suggest, I think is part. It is sort of like is part. One of them is as a result, I think, of the it's the write your own first scenario kind of programs which has been initiated, which is sort of creating scenarios that you get a lot of one shots.
Right.
Okay. Basically where you have the writer come in with a plot, with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that, I mean, I'm not adverse to the one shot by any means, but you look at, I mean, I just means I've looked at a lot of them.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I think of course, the other trend, and then that's to be expected, is just the improvement in the quality of the layout and the look of them. So I mean, as I said, I come back to hostility, and that is the layout and style of that is very well done. That it's clean, it's tidy, it fits the period. And there are a couple of others, they've just been very professionally produced.
There you go, Stu. A little bit of a plug there. You're welcome. But I think you're right, Leo, listening to what you're saying. And I think this goes, this goes for so many of the scenarios that we actually see now is, because I do like to pick them up myself. I mean, they just, they look, I mean, obviously, this has had a few people work on it, and Stu's been brilliant at championing the people that have worked on the scenario. But I think you're right. The standard, the quality is just outstanding. Outstanding. I'm just looking now as well. There's some fantastic artists, editors, and even with our MR writers that don't necessarily have, let's say, the funds to reach out to editors and artists. The quality is still there. They're still putting out some fantastic work. And then obviously when we do get our artists involved and our editors, you're seeing, that it's mirroring. It's that semi-professional kind of work there, isn't it? It's really, really powerful stuff.
Yeah, it's a common thing. You see it when you have that kind of that program of availability of a sort of like a community. So obviously I'm seeing it here with Miskatonic Repository. But the other thing I review is fanzines. Which a lot of which in the recent sort of like with things like ZineQuest have sort of come out of the old school Renaissance. Yeah. And they can vary from being quite rough and ready, but those have pushed further and further along the path to that semi-professionalism.
Do you think that this is just a natural evolution of community writers, or do you think that this is because, I don't know, I suppose technology, ability, engagement there's a higher expectation, so people are stepping up to the bar?
It's a mixture of all of that, because even if you go back into the 80s again with the fanzines, you had the adoption and easy availability during the period of desktop publishing software. Crude at the time, by today's standards, but still serviceable, and people were using it and getting better and better. And we have the same thing again.
Yeah, and I think, and I can tell you, I'm an absolute recipient of this wonderful knowledge. You can go on YouTube, and if you're on InDesign, you can go, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? So having that knowledge at your fingertips in such a quick, morsel-sized fashion is, well, there's a lot of people teaching themselves a lot of skills, which I also think is an amazing thing about our community. Okay, so JR's second question is, how often do you get around to playing or running an MR scenario? And if so, are there any that you've been wanting to play but haven't had the time?
Okay, so I mean, I've probably only played one or two of the Miskatonic Repository scenarios overall, because obviously since with the lockdown, my gaming time has shrunk. Whereas I would go to conventions, I would find people playing them, Call of Cthulhu scenarios. And because I read them, it's not necessarily that I want to play them. Yes. The main one, of course, I have played is Viral, because I've did some of the play testing on that. And I think I've played one or two of Alex Gillotte's other scenarios as well. Are there ones I'd like to play? I mean, yes, there are. The problem, of course, is that once I've read them,
you've read them. So unless you're keepering,
I mean, one of the dangers. I mean, okay, I write a lot of reviews, so one of the dangers is like once I've read them, it means I can't necessarily play, what I read, and that's mostly true. There are exceptions, So, for example, for I'm a big fan of RuneQuest, and so there's a scenario campaign on there on the Johnstown Compendium called 6 Seasons in Sarta, which you may have heard of.
I have indeed, very famous, and it's a community campaign, like a really, really amazing piece of work. Yeah,
absolutely, it is fantastic. It's one of if you are starting playing RuneQuest, it's the one you should pick up. Okay, absolutely. The thing is, I know what's going to happen in that scenario, but I still want to play it, and I'm in the middle of. I started playing a campaign, and I'm really enjoying it, despite knowing what's coming. Okay. I mean, I played through let's see, Legacy of Arius Lurker, which is a campaign for Cthulhu Invictus from Golden Goblin Press. Okay,
Right.
I played through it after I'd reviewed it, so I knew the twists that were coming in it. And so, what you do when that happens is you divorce yourself from the narrative, knowing what's coming to a certain extent. Okay, I can hear what's coming. What would my player character know in this situation? So it takes more role-playing skill in effect. But I was playing in at the same time, going, "Oh, I know they come. Those shocks are coming up. Okay, how are my fellow players going to react to those?" Because
yeah. So is it to a degree? I mean, obviously there's some clever, positive metagaming there where you're going, yeah, I know what's coming up, but my character doesn't, so I'm not giving away and this and this and this. But because you've read it, because you reviewed it, is it a bit kind of like watching a film for the second or third time that you still enjoy, but you get to enjoy it in a different way?
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, that's an apt description. Although sometimes I've had experiences where I've turned up to play. I was at a convention at Concrete Cow, which I regularly go to in Milton Keynes twice a year. And one of the scenarios I signed up to was for Lamentations of the Flame Princess with fantasy roleplay, which is an old school Renaissance retro clone. And we started playing it, going, do I know this scenario? I can't remember whether I know this scenario at all. And he sort of said, and he sort of like the referee sort of showed the book up, and I went, "Oh yeah, I do know that scenario. I've edited that scenario, and I'd completely forgotten about it."
So yeah, you kind of go, "I'm going to do this." Wait a minute.
And it's a case of hope, mate. And I just sort of like, and it wasn't even the case I couldn't actually remember a great deal about the plot, so I just went with it.
Years and years ago when I lived in London, I was reading a book and I left it on the tube or something like that on my commute. And then years later, I didn't realize I bought the same book, started reading it, and I thought for a good week that I was some kind of prophetic kind of individual reading this book going, I know, I kept saying to my wife going, I know what's going to happen. And then I remembered that I'd actually read half of the book years earlier. So yeah, okay. But not as stylish as your style there, Pookie. Okay, so last question from JR, and he did come up with some great questions. So the last one is, what are the most common mistakes you come across in MR scenarios that send your editor spidey sense tingling?
Okay, I mean, I say it needs an edit quite often in the reviews, is sort of like as one of the cons, and even I get at Bud of Bud's RPG reviews and others sort of like laugh at that, but it is a case of sometimes you go, this would have helped if someone else had read it. Just for content and style, just to see if it flows more than anything else. Generally, it's just stuff like that, because the thing is, I'm an editor by trade, by profession. That's what I do all day. I spend most of my time editing Microsoft marketing content, which is exciting as it sounds.
Wow, I'm excited already.
I can tell. Calm down. So I've got an eye for this, and you're kind of going with Miskatonic repository stuff. You have to accept that it is not written by professionals.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I say if generally my response is generally if it needs an edit, it needs a little bit more of a love and attention than perhaps the author had to give to it. And my recommendation is always at one point is sort of like step away from it, come back to it, sit down, go through it again. It's incredibly boring sometimes having to do that. Having to go through a book again, but occasionally it does help.
Yeah. Joe, I think I'm thinking now back to some of the MR cons, which are fantastic, that are run by the Council of Shoggoths, and I can tell you, that is something that I've heard Heinrich Moore talk about a number of times. That's one of his key kind of rules, and I think it's a brilliant thing that should be out there in the community, because especially I think what's the way I'm trying to put this? It's because people care so much
Mm.
about what they're writing, and quite rightly,
Mhm.
because people are creating here, and I think when people are putting out something that they've created, that advice there from you, Pookie, kind of, echoing a bit of what Heinrich's saying, just giving it that extra bit of time, giving it that extra bit of something, is just a game changer. And I remember I having something out, and Heinrich had a look at it and just kind of went, "Oh, Newman, there,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there." And it was that having that extra kind of eye on it, that extra bit of time, that extra bit of something to tidy it up
yeah.
with. So yeah, absolutely. I think
I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely. I
please
mean,
go on.
go away, literally just step away from the computer, for a day or two. Go and do something else. Don't think about the project.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry,
Or just start another one and
yeah,
then go back to it.
my cat is being very annoying.
I think having a cat in there's got to be a must. It's it's that famous picture of you.
And this isn't that
Yeah.
cat. It's another cat. So I have four.
Competition.
I have four cats. Well, we have four cats and an outside cat.
Oh, nice. Okay. So There's isn't there a little campaign, Cat Thulu?
There is Cat Thulu. I've
Yeah.
never got her to play.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. Growth mindset. Okay, so we've got a question here from Mike Sands. And his question is, why don't creators suggest links or tie-ins with other products from other creators that would enable a wider campaign?
Okay. Well, I mean, I can't speak for them. When I'm going through a when I'm going through a scenario from the Misconstruct repository, one of my thoughts is, okay, if it's not a one shot, or generally, can I fit this into a campaign? Can I fit this into a setting? So I think there's a scenario. Is it Pharaoh's Sacrifice?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, which I liked quite a lot because it was set in Scotland. It made quite a bit of a setting of Scotland during the period, and I went, okay, that works. That would work with sort of like any camp, the sort of like Shadows over Scotland setting.
Yeah. So if I mean, it's quite a nice idea, really, isn't it? Thinking, if you're writing something, you're supporting like long-term keepers as well.
Mm.
If they're looking for other materials, let's say they are doing, the old Cubicle 7 kind of Shadows over Scotland, or whether they're running Massive Nyarlathotep, or whatever it is that people are running, having a scenario that can drop in, it gives that bit of freshness, a bit of individuality. Yeah, okay. Do you see a lot of those coming through? Do you see a lot of scenarios that are, hey, look, you can add this on to, I don't know, you can add this on to Horror on the Orient Express, or we've got something here that can be dropped into a Time to Harvest. Do you get a lot of that?
Not a lot. I mean, that's why when I do highlight it where I see it.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Well, there you go, listeners. If you've got an idea for a campaign, a mini scenario that ranges around one of the big existing campaigns that are already there, you might be finding a bit of a niche in the market there. You might be finding something to refresh a keeper's palate. Okay, so a second question from Mike Sands here. So Mike is asking, are there any macro formulas that he believes are overdone? And he gives an example, is it X is a front for a secret group of cultists trying to summon Mythos A, B, C? So are there any of these kind of macro formulas, these tropes, these ideas that we see overdone or not done enough, I guess?
Things like, I don't know, a classic one, I suppose. I've got a couple. Ghouls operating behind a cemetery, or a funeral home. A funeral home in particular, I think, is kind of like, okay. Or the other thing about the husband wanting, a widower wanting to bring his wife back from the dead, is kind of, I kind of go, this is another sort of like cliche that I've seen before. But that doesn't mean that you can't do that cliche plot if you do something interesting with it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I go back to the aforementioned Pharaoh's Sacrifice. That's essentially that plot. but it's written with a strong sense of place
Yeah.
and a different way of setting that all up, and the means of sort of like you know, of the villain driving that sort of like that aim
Yeah.
through the board game. I think it's called Jumperty. And I went, okay. Although this is a cliche, what he's done there is something different and interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I think, yeah, having spoken to this a while ago with Mike Mason, he talks quite significantly about subverting the norm.
Mm.
He actually, you know, and Mike, I apologize. Please, you know, feel free to tell me if I'm wrong here. But he was saying that, you know, really likes lots of stereotypes and tropes and things, but it's about exactly what you're saying. It's about how they are fresh, how they are new, how they are inviting, and what they give the investigator to do. So that's really quite interesting, is that some of those tropes, they can be really great, they can be really clever, and they, even though we know them, getting them done in a different way that perhaps we don't expect is the way to do it. What about so we've talked about the, you know, that's a really good example there of one that is done and it's familiar, and in the Pharaoh Sacrifice is done well. It, you know, subverts the expectation there. What about rarely attempted? Are there any kind of, I don't know, macro formulas, tropes that you kind of go, do you know what people don't do that they should do? This.
I okay. It's more a case of sort of like I don't know. I can't really think of anything offhand to say to that one. I mean, there are great old ones I don't see used often, like Cthulhu.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know whether I can come up with something that, you know, that I don't see often done, because obviously once I've seen it done, you know, you're looking for an exception there.
Yeah. Yeah. I suppose with, you know, if you're looking through the Malleus Monstrorum and you're looking at the monsters, you're looking at the, you know, the great old ones, finding something that is unique and different and that people haven't used a lot, that for a lot of people probably could be the start of a scenario seed. So rather than going, well, this is my story, I'm doing the husband who's bringing his wife back from the dead, where does my entity fit in here, where does my monster fit in, going the other way and finding something that people don't get to use that often or don't get to play that often might be a really nice way to then build a scenario around it and bring it to the forefront, because it is using a unique, unused entity.
Yeah, and the thing is the same again with settings. You know, so let me say, for example, scenario set in early colonial New England, something like that, or say Dark Ages, or the equivalent of Cthulhu Dark Ages, but set in Baghdad or Constantinople, or you know,
yeah, things that stand out, things that are unique, things that people go, oh, wait a minute, yeah, okay, that's really good. I like that. That's really good advice. So there you go, listeners. You've got, well, let's be honest, what Pookie's open there is a giant Pandora's box. Look at what's not out there. Take a setting and go, right, where is that setting not set? And then look at that, or what mythos could be used in that that's not something that's done.
I mean, it does set the author up sort of like to do a whole lot of extra research. But you know, if you're going to go away and do, okay, let's do Dark Ages Baghdad. But if I look at somebody like, say, Andy Miller,
yeah,
I can imagine him doing it, because the amount of content, extra content and research he puts into his scenarios, you know,
yeah,
I'm generally going, yeah, okay, you know, going, you know, I expect a lot from it, a lot sort of like extra content.
Yeah,
when he sends me something.
And isn't that one of the amazing things? You know, where as a MR writer, one of the things that I think people do love is going, right, I get to research this time period, this place, this location, these people, and it's the rabbit hole that we all love to kind of fall down and spend some time down there. Andy, if you're listening, I think you've been challenged, my friend.
Also, the other thing is, go to your local library or your local bookshop. Okay, go to the section on local history. Look at the ghost books. Look at the sort of like the oddities of history.
Yeah.
Okay. I live in Birmingham. Okay, and that's got a bit, you know, long history. And you just have to walk into my local bookshop I go, there's a whole shelf on the history of Birmingham, and my partner was just sort of like, leafing through the odd places, a book about the odd places of Birmingham, going, well, there's lots of things in here you could start thumbing through and just turning into something.
Do you know, that was one of the projects that Evan Perlman put together, the Hometown Horrors Volume 1 and 2. Really, really lovely idea in terms of a few little scenario seeds, where people live. What are some of the rumors about where, where you are as well?
I have reviewed the first one. I could put it. I think it was a bit, for me, I mean, if you read my review, I think it was a bit all over the place. It needed a bit more focus. Every location needed just more than just a page and a bit.
I think I was a contributor in Volume 2, and I mean, I was excited to be a part of it just because it seemed like a really brilliant community project, and it brought a lot of writers together to kind of look at each other's short little things. I even ran mine actually on with Symphony Entertainment with Bridget Jeffries, which was brilliant fun. But you could see how each one of those, they could be a scenario in themselves. They could be a much bigger thing. So yeah, okay,
But well, for me, it felt like every entry was a pitch for something larger.
Do you know? I think I think that's what Evan's idea was the idea that you kind of go, right, if you read about, I don't know, somewhere in Texas or Aberystwyth, Wales, you've got a little bit of a pitch you've got to weigh in there. But I think you're right. Each one of them, you could just go, like we've said, just down the rabbit hole, turn it into something completely unique and different. Right. Okay. So we've got a question here. Our next question is from our very own John Hedgehall. And he is asking, how regularly do you find that sales of a product align with the quality of what you find inside?
Pretty much they do. The quality does rise. I mean, so for example, the quality of the scenario, like Viral, explains why it has continued to sell, why I think Host and Hostility will do well. There are scenarios out there which I think could do better and have been around on the repository since they've actually began. There's a cracking little scenario in there called it's the Apartment Below or The Man Below by Adam Gauntlet, and it's a lovely period piece set in Harlem, fully written. It's ready to play. Sort of the apartment downstairs or something like that, and it's really good. And it's just sort of like it's because it's almost at the back of the queue because it was so long ago.
Yeah. And I think that's it. A lot of these have got to be kept to a degree, within the repository's eye, within the community's eye, because if they're not there, people don't know about it, and therefore it's not going to kind of pop up. It's not going to be a thing. Okay, let's have a look. Is it The Man Downstairs?
Man Downstairs, yeah.
By Adam Gauntlet. Okay, listeners, if you're looking for something that Pookie recommends, that's been around since the beginning, so there's been a lot of evolution, a lot of change, a lot of progression. Check it out. Let's do Adam Gauntlet a favor, and if you fancy having a look, The Man Downstairs.
That one is great for running if you've got a campaign run. It's set in New York and especially Harlem, with Harlem.
Oh, brilliant.
With the fantastic Harlem Unbound.
Yeah, outstanding source book. Okay, there you go. I think that's definitely one to check out. Right, last question, and this is from me. Again, I'm stealing the last question. How big is your backlog of potential reviews?
I suppose I've probably got about 20 or so Miskatonic repository titles, maybe a few more. If I was looking at my backlog of reviews in general, it's several feet deep. I'm still working from books. I'm still working on books I brought back from Gen Con last August.
Wow. But that's because of the amount of work that's there for you to be able to look at.
Oh yes, yes. I mean, I'm writing roughly 6 reviews a week. Which is sort of probably a ridiculous number. So I am ploughing my way through it. Just offering people sort of like a variety of different things to look at week. It's not just Call of Cthulhu.
But for our Miskatonic repository writers out there, your submissions are open, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. The only thing I will say is I can't promise you when exactly I will get to your book. There is no queue in which I'm just working down the list. It's literally I will go and grab something right now that I can get and do very quickly because of the format that I generally write a Miskatonic Monday review in, which is designed to be punchy, to be quick. It's all bullet points.
Yeah.
And the reason why it's bullet points is, look, this is designed for the person who's making a purchase, more or less, immediately. I need something right now. What can I find?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great format. And I think what it is for a lot of us that buy the games, a lot of us that write the games, you're looking at very, as you say, it's those bullet points. It's bite-sized information. It's key things that you want to know about a scenario. And, it's there to make someone go, yeah, do you know what? I think I will.
Yeah. And
so,
I mean, yeah, that format has evolved over time. So now I'm putting a bit more stronger conclusions in, and I'm listing phobias as well.
Oh, nice. Okay. So that's a nice one. That's, that's not a collection of phobias over the years.
Well, it's like, phobias are so important to Call of Cthulhu. So I thought, well, okay, I'm reading this and I'm going, which phobia will you go with this scenario? And it means I can actually dig into the phobias and get quite obscure with some of them.
Oh, okay, I like that. That's really cool. I mean, I think that is one of the really fun things, isn't it? Is especially if you're writing a scenario, thinking, okay, this is a situation. This potentially is sanity loss. If they roll something that is beyond, this level of sanity loss, what phobia could there be? What mania could there be? Looking at those things and researching those things, that's a real
And I mean
thing to do.
That's not often written into the scenarios themselves, but essentially that's also sort of like something there for the potential keeper. To say, if my player, if one of the investigators, has an episode, goes insane, what might he suffer?
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Okay, that's always a lovely thought for us to end on. What is the investigator going to suffer? Pookie, before we do go, can I ask you just to remind people that want to send their scenario to, they want to get in touch with you, how and where would they do that?
Okay. The easiest way to do it is I do have a contact box on my blog, which is reviews from Relier, or Relier Reviews .blogspot.com. And that's the most direct way. You will find me under Pookie on the Miskatonic repository and Miskatonic Playhouse and Chaosium Discords.
Okay. Yeah.
And you will find me under on Facebook under my Christian name, which is Matthew Pookie.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. And Pookie, thank you so much for joining us and, well, answering the community's questions.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. As I say, most unexpected. And I hope I've enjoyed myself, and I hope the listeners enjoy what I've.
Yeah, brilliant. And we met in person at the UK Games Expo like last year. So hopefully, if you're there again this year, we'll bump into each other again.
Well, I definitely will be there because the UK Games Expo is my local convention.
It is Birmingham, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
literally, I used to work in sort of the next town down, Coventry, and I used to just sort of like get off the train, get on the train from home, and then sort of like just get on there and just be there in half an hour. Ridiculously, I even used to work closer when the event was held in Birmingham. I used to work 2 bus stops down from the Masonic Lodge.
That's quite close.
Yeah.
Oh, in a Masonic Lodge. Oh, okay, that's quite a cool little setting.
Original Expo was held in Masonic Lodge and there was an upper gallery which you as a member of the public you could wander around and sort of like, and it was just full of these portraits of these
Wow.
Masonic Lodge members, full regalia, and you'd have the full regalia in the display cabinets, and there'll be these odd rooms which sort of looked almost like courts with black and white tiled floors, and you're going, this is odd, but okay, let's not question this.
Well, I can tell you, I am going to be there representing the Playhouse, and what's really nice this year as well is that there's going to be other members of the Playhouse team there, so it'd be nice to catch up with you when we're there, and hopefully viewers and listeners, if you're there as well, make yourself known to us. Just make sure you come and say hi. But on that note, Pookie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
As we draw the curtain on tonight's performance, we thank you for joining us and look forward to inviting you back to the Miskatonic Playhouse. In the meantime, you can also find us in the links below. And if you'd like to submit your scenario for us to play, email miskatonicplayhouse@gmail.com.